WisconsinEye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
WisconsinEye continues to interview candidates in 2014 elections. We're interviewing Mr. Tony Kurtz of Prairie du Chien. He's a Republican candidate in the 3rd Congressional District. Mr. Kurtz, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here.
Just a programming note, WisconsinEye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 130 hospitals and health systems for making these candidate interviews possible. Mr. Kurtz, first-time candidate.
Yes, I am. Proud of that, too.
Then let's start out with a short bio, please.
Spent 20 years on active duty flying Cobra and Apache helicopters. I've served all over the world. I've served in Germany. I've served in South Korea. Served 2 tours in Iraq. When I got out of the Army after 20 years serving on those active duties, I started a small business, working back to the men and women in uniform in the Army and the Air Force and the Navy, training them on safety programs, environmental programs, accident investigations. Also, started in 2006, I started a farm. I started with 56 acres. I built that farm up to 210 acres. 100 of those acres are certified organic. The other 40 are still conventional. That's something I'm very proud about. And if you look at this district and what represents the 3rd Congressional District, it's a lot of hard-working small businesses, something that I've done, and so many wonderful family farms, and that's something I'm very proud about, that I've started that, and I've maintained that, and that's very successful.
Now, you're a native of Ohio. What brought you to Wisconsin, and how long have you lived in the 3rd District?
Well, when I was on active duty, the first Gulf War, I met a first lieutenant. Her name was Kimberly Bjornstead. She was an Army nurse. We met in King Fahd, Saudi Arabia, and 7 weeks later, when we got back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, we got married. And Kim and I have been married for 23 wonderful years. Kim is originally from Westby, Wisconsin. She went to nursing school for Turbo. And so when we retired in 2005 from the Army, we started our second career. We moved back here to Western Wisconsin to raise our kids.
Excellent. You could have run as a first-time candidate for state office, but you're seeking the 3rd Congressional District. The decision to run for a major office, sir?
I get that question a lot. And what I tell people is, I'm an outsider. You know, I'm from the private sector. I'm a veteran, I'm a small business owner, I'm a farmer. I think our founding fathers wanted that in the Constitution. Right now, when I look at politics, especially at the federal level, we have so many career politicians. Ron Kind's a perfect example of that. He's been in office for going on 18 years. That frustrates me as a voter. That frustrates me as a veteran, as a business owner, as a small farmer. I think we need more non-politicians in Washington, D.C. So this is not a major jump for me. I've served around the world. I know the problems that we have in the world, but I know the problems we have in Western Wisconsin, and I can address those issues in a common sense approach from somebody that has lived those and listened to people. One thing I'm a very good listener, and that's one thing I'm learning in the district. People want to know that their representative is listening to them.
And why are you a Republican?
You know, Steve, I grew up watching Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, that's one of the reasons why I joined the military. You know, we came out of Jimmy Carter's administration. The military was frowned upon. Ronald Reagan made it good to be an American, proud to be an American again. And that's one of the main reasons why I joined the service. He made it proud to wear that uniform again and to serve. And just everybody. When you talk about Ronald Reagan, that's why I'm a Republican. And that's kind of who I identify with as a Republican, a Ronald Reagan Republican.
Okay. From your website, let's run down some of what you consider to be the major issues, sir.
Absolutely.
You list as one of the first ones a balanced budget. Does that mean you would seek a balanced budget amendment, sir?
Yes, I don't want to take that off the table. I would want a balanced budget amendment. We need a balanced budget. All the men and women in our district, they've got to balance a checkbook at the end of the day. You know, when Ron Kind went to office almost 18 years ago, our debt was at $5 trillion. That debt is $17.5 trillion. That's $55,000 per citizen in our district. Steve, you and I both know that's not sustainable. So yes, we need a balanced budget. We need to take some responsibility for this debt that we've all created. Now that's one thing I want to make sure that people understand. We've all created this.
Right.
And it's our responsibility to address that. So yes, we need to balance the budget before we can get to any sound deficit reduction.
Also, you list health care. So I guess my question is, you've heard President Obama say it's a victory that 7 to 8 million people have health care as a result of the Affordable Care Act. What's your position on that act, sir?
The Affordable Care Act, it's a failure. Obamacare is a failure. You know, when Ron Kine touted this back in 2010, he promised the men and women of our district, you could keep your health care coverage, you could keep your doctor, and it was going to save all this money, Steve. I just talked to a young man about 2 weeks ago up in Stevens Point. Great young man. He's 36. His wife's 34. They got a small business up there. Before Obamacare, Matt's premiums each month was $200 a month. $2,000 deductible for his health care policy that he liked. Under Obamacare, it's over $700 a month and a $6,000 deductible. Steve, Matt can't afford that. So those are some of the broken promises. Not only President Obama, but Congressman Kine, but Nancy Pelosi promised the men and women of this district. So that's a failure when you look at those promises that were broken by Congressman Kine.
How would you fix it? When I interviewed Congressman Kine at the Democratic State Convention, he said, yes, he defended the Affordable Care Act, said, look, no pre-existing conditions, no cap on benefits, and young people can be covered by their parents until age 26. How would you tweak or get rid of the Affordable Care Act?
Steve, the first thing I would want to do is repeal it, but I would want to replace it with something based on free market principles. Competition. There is no reason why a small business like Matt should be limited to the state of Wisconsin. He should be able to shop for insurance anywhere he wants across state lines. You can do it with auto insurance, you can do it with homeowner insurance. Why can't you do it with your health insurance? I also believe in tort reform. Now, as far as pre-existing conditions, I'm in favor of having some type of risk pools for those individuals. Nobody wants to not have people uninsured. But we need to do it in a smart way that is truly affordable. This act is unaffordable. And Congressman Kine is hiding behind the facts. The facts is this is hurting men and women in western Wisconsin. It is hurting small business owners, and it's hurting individuals like Matt and his wife.
Also on your website is a key issue is veterans' rights. Now, part of that travels with the recent VA scandal.
Yes.
Have you talked to any veterans who have waited an exceedingly long period for care either in Wisconsin or Minnesota, and how would you fix the VA?
You know, being a veteran, my wife is also a veteran. You know, I've used the services, the VA services. One thing, we are very fortunate here in Wisconsin. We do have good VA facilities. Now, are there some problems here and there about delays? Yes, there are, but nowhere near to the other ones in the other hospitals around the country. And so
the Toma Hospital is in the 3rd Congressional.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Toma
excuse me.
Yep, and Toma is a model. Now, there's some issues. I've heard some people waiting for some hearing aids, some other issues like that. But the general consensus from the veterans that I talk to, and every time I'm in those areas, I talk to veterans. I go to reach out. I'm a life member of the VFW, so I'm constantly talking to veterans about these.
Yes.
They're happy with some of the programs at the Toma facility, but there are some isolated incidents. But all in all, the Toma facility is well run. But that's the key thing, though. You have to think about management. Our management team in Toma is doing a good job. That's not the case in some of these other facilities around the country.
Including Phoenix.
Absolutely.
Well
and that's something that we need to address as your representative.
Would you have voted in Congress for this bill that would let some veterans go get their health care privately?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, you bring an interesting point up. I talked to a veteran the other day at the Butterfest there in Sparta, and he mentioned just that. He was going to be on a waiting list I believe it was for a knee scope at Toma. It was going to be more than 30 days to get down to Madison, and they sent him to La Crosse. And he was very happy with that. But see, that was a proactive management from Toma. The issue is, why didn't Phoenix do something like that?
Also, you talk about job growth. You spoke about the small businesses. It's largely a rural district, so you're interested in the farm bill. But what's the best way to create job growth in the 3rd, Mr. Kurtz?
There's a lot of businesses out right now that are looking for people to hire. I can't tell you, Steve, how many businesses I've been, their signs out. We want to hire people. The problem is they're not getting the applicants. And that's something I want to address. You know, I hear a lot from the small business about all the tax codes, all the regulations that are very burdensome to them. So that's something I want to focus on, is reducing the burden of regulation on these small businesses. But the other thing I want to promote is jobs. There are jobs out there, and we've got to make sure we link those individuals with those jobs. And so many small business owners have told me, Tony, I'll train them. I just need to get them in the door. So we do have a little disconnect right now in our district. There's jobs out there. Why aren't these people applying for them?
You list deficit reduction as a major priority and a goal if you're elected in the 3rd Congressional District. But let me ask this. Both Medicare and Social Security are on track to go bankrupt.
Yes.
How do you reconcile, how do you fix those two programs?
Well, I want to go back a little bit in history. You know, Congressman Ron Kind's been in office for 18 years. Those were issues 18 years ago, Steve. How many years have you been on the job, with your experience, have these been issues? And we keep kicking these down. That's why it's such a priority now that we fix these. I want every option on the table. I don't want to be the candidate to say, well, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. I want every option on the table. I like the plan that Paul Ryan has. I think that's a very good plan. I think it's a good starting point. But we need to address those instead of waiting another 18 years to fix them. Because sooner or later, you know, the day is coming where it's going to end.
Okay, I want to go back to what you said. Paul Ryan's plan would be a starting point for debate and your consideration. New issue. 10 or 11 million people are in this country illegally. Immigration reform played a role in the Eric Cantor defeat.
Yes.
How would you respond as a 3rd District Congress member?
Steve, one thing you have to understand, I spent almost 4 years at Fort Hood, Texas. One of the things I got to do at Fort Hood, Texas was fly on the border with Mexico. I did drug interdiction missions down there, and I actually flew with Border Patrol agents when we chased illegal immigrants across the border. The first thing we have to do in immigration is secure the border. Once again, we've been talking about this for years. Men like Ron Kind has been talking about this for years. It's still an issue today. We've got to secure the border. One thing I will not support is amnesty. But I do support some type of mechanism that's in place for the people that are here in this country. If they're here and they've committed a crime, they need to go back immediately. If they're here, they need to learn English, they need to get out at the end of the line, and they need to pay some type of penalty for that citizenship if they meet those certain criteria. That's something I would support. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, excuse me, but if they do all that, would you give them the right of citizenship, Mr. Kurtz?
Once those parameters are met, yes, I would. I would consider that. You better believe it.
What about the recent flood of children and mothers from Honduras and Guatemala that are clogging?
That's right.
Well, they're as you say, they're gaining access because, in your terms, we haven't secured the borders.
We have not.
But we have thousands of mothers and children. How do you respond to that problem, sir?
Steve, this is going to sound, the way you fix that problem is to send them back.
Send them back, and you've seen the news reports that they're coming here because of violence and gangs and drugs?
That.
Okay.
But to stop that, we have to send them back and secure the border. I know that might not be a popular answer, but to curb that, because if they keep coming over, you know it's just going to spread. And until we say enough's enough, it's not going to stop.
Is that a pretty expensive answer, Tony?
Securing the border?
No, sending all those children and their mothers back to Guatemala, Honduras.
I'd have to look at the numbers, I would imagine, yes. It's probably going to be somewhat costly, yes.
Let's talk about campaign finance. There's a call in Congress by the Democrats to amend the Constitution to overturn Citizens United. How do you feel about this, sir?
I don't want a constitutional amendment for something like that. I want to go about another way, and I'm a true believer in term limits. You know, Congressman Ron Kind, if you look at the money in politics, and that's one thing a lot of our constituents in our district talk about, is the money in politics. I would encourage people to look and find out just how much political action committee money Ron Kind gets. 74% of his money for his campaign are donations from political action committees. 74%. You get that over a lifetime being a lifetime politician like Ron Kind. 74% comes from PACs. So my question to you, Steve, and the men and women in our district, who's he really working for? Is he working for us in our district, or is he working for these political action committees? And to me, to stem that is term limits. I'm a true believer in term limits. I think that's going to stop a lot of this money, especially for these career politicians, that they just keep getting it over and over. And that's something I would definitely support, is term limits.
How many terms would you serve?
You know, I've listened to Sean Duffy on this, and I think it's a very prudent plan that he has. Maybe 6 terms. That'd be a total of 12 years, and same thing for Senate. That'd be 12 years of 2 terms for a senator.
2 terms for U.S. Senator.
I think those are very prudent, common sense approaches.
Are you asking if you win the primary for some of these third-party groups who don't have to disclose where they got their money, should they not spend money on your behalf, either to help elect you or help defeat your opponent if you win the primary? Should third-party groups stay out of the race?
Well, right now, from my understanding, there was a third-party group that ran a commercial for Ron Kine in our district, so somebody's already supporting him. And no, I'm not going to.
Okay.
If they want to do that, that's their business. That's their right. And of course, obviously, I can't influence that in any way whatsoever.
Okay. I'm asking this of all candidates because it is so timely. Your reaction to Judge Crabb's reaction on same-sex marriage, Mr. Kurtz?
You know, I wish the federal government wouldn't get into state rights. I believe in state rights, and I think it's up to the states to make that decision, not the federal government.
And your personal position on the issue? My
personal position is I think marriage is between a man and a woman. I do like the civil law that we have in Wisconsin, and I think that's something, I mean, that's what I support.
On energy, would you support the Keystone Pipeline?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about international affairs, which changes by the hour.
Yes, it does.
You have a lot of experience in the military and in foreign countries, but I think the most relevant question now is, would you vote to send 300, would you support 300 advisors that the President Obama has said, I intend to send to Iraq?
Yeah. I'm going to have to look at that. I mean, right now, Iraq is such a fluid situation. As you mentioned, every day there's something new. The Iraqi people, they've got to step up. Right now, they're not. I think that needs to be something that we as a country and our president need to say, hey, Iraqi people, you need to step up and start taking responsibility for protecting your country. My goal and what I look at for priorities, one thing is I like to prioritize things. And when you look at the priorities, we want to protect Americans. And if those 300s are used to protect Americans, then yes, I would support sending them in there to protect Americans, because we have so many Americans that are in Baghdad right now. And then obviously from the strategic standpoint, we need to protect our strategic interests in the region.
As somebody with a 20-year career in the military, let me ask you this. What lessons do you think America has learned about when to put the trite term boots on the ground in international to fight terrorism? When should we put those boots on the ground to fight international terrorism?
Well, when it's that strategic interest for the United States of America. Now, I served in Iraq 2 times. When we went in Iraq, that was for strategic interest. And I've been on the record to say when we went in Iraq, I thought that was the right decision. One thing I think we talk about quite a bit in this country is, and we look at so much things in the past as far as status of forces agreement. Many people agree if we had a status of forces agreement with Iraq, as we have with so many other countries, we wouldn't be having these issues today. I do agree with that. Moving forward, we've got to look at the strategic interests of our country and protecting Iraq and making sure that doesn't spread. We don't want it to go in Jordan. We don't want it to go in Saudi Arabia or Kuwait. So from that aspect, we need to make sure we check our interests in that region.
Your website says the United States, again, we're staying on international affairs, the United States cannot lead from behind, or we will be left behind militarily, socially, and economically. Can you explain that?
Right now, our country does not have a foreign policy. I think this president, he talks and says so many things, but yet he doesn't follow through. You know, I'm a true believer in Theodore Roosevelt. You know, you speak softly, but you carry a loud stick. Right now, we do not. So we don't have any credibility in this country. If you look from Syria, if you look what happened in Iraq, if we had a strong foreign policy, I truly don't think what's happening in Iraq right now would be going on. Same thing with Syria. So I believe in a strong military. I believe you use it very prudently and very responsible. You know, those are things that I fundamentally believe, as Ronald Reagan and other men.
What's the balance? Does the president lead on foreign affairs? And if the president leads, what's the role of Congress on these very, very tough issues, Mr. Kurtz?
Congress needs to keep him in check. You know, recently, this president released 5 known terrorists. This country has...
For Sergeant Bergdorf?
Yes, for Sergeant Bergdorf.
Was that a fair trade?
No, it was a horrible trade. It was something this country has never done in the history of the United States of America. This president traded 5 known terrorists. As a soldier, I would not want to be traded for those 5 terrorists. I was trained as an Apache helicopter pilot what you do if you get taken prisoner. So I know what you need to do. You don't want to be traded for 5 terrorists. What the role as your congressman is to tell the president he's wrong. Congressman Kine has been completely silent on this issue. The president had a responsibility to go to Congress 30 days prior to doing this. He did not. As a congressman, as a representative for the men and women, the veterans of the 3rd District, it is your obligation to keep that president in check. Congressman Kine is not doing that. I will do that.
So you think the president broke that law that Congress should have been notified 30 days before that exchange?
Yes.
If you were serving the 3rd District right now, what consequence should the president pay for breaking that law, Mr. Kurtz?
That's something I'd have to look at and talk to other colleagues in Congress and see what type of things we would bring up against the president.
Okay. You had a long 20-year military career. Now you and your wife have this successful farm. Mm-hmm. You're a first-time candidate. Tell me what it's like. Is campaigning like you thought? How is it different than you envisioned it, sir?
It's what I envisioned. It's getting out and meeting people. And one thing I've learned is our district is so diverse. We have such wonderful people, hardworking. We got such good schools, from the public schools to the private schools. We got 6 universities, fantastic universities, in our technical colleges. Those are the things that I'm finding. That, you know, I was driving back from Ellsworth yesterday at the Cheese Curd Festival in Ellsworth, and I was talking to my campaign manager, and I said, you know, we have such a nice, beautiful district. We were driving along the Mississippi on, 35, the River Road, and it's just such a beautiful country, and it's complemented with the people. And it's the volunteers. You know, when I started this campaign, we had to get nomination papers, which I had the most of all the other candidates, and we had over 100 volunteers throughout the district, and it's amazing. Everywhere I go, more people want to volunteer. That's very humbling, the outpouring of support, talking to people like Matt about the issues that are affecting him. That's very rewarding, knowing that I can be part of a solution to get these things fixed for this country.
We have run through a long list of issues, but I want to give you a chance to highlight any issues that you feel you have made a central part of your campaign that I haven't brought up, sir. Anything I've missed?
No, we talked about Obamacare. We talked about the debt. One thing I want people to look at is the candidates in this race, including Ron Kine. I would like them to look at my resume compared to Congressman Ron Kine's. I am a veteran. I've served around the world. I am a small business owner. I have a farm. Those are things that I live and do and breathe every day along with my family, like so many other men and women in this district. I'm not a career politician. And Steve, I'm very proud of that. And I do not have any intention to be a career politician. And that's what I want the men and women of this district to know.
Before you go up against Ron Kine, you have to win a primary.
Yes, I do.
So I want to give you a chance, if you choose to do it, to highlight any differences between you and your primary opponent, sir.
Well, if you look at, and one thing people have to understand is there are other opponents in the race, and that's a good thing, because we're all concerned about this district. And we know that we're not getting the leadership from Ron Kine that we should. I've been endorsed by men like Dan Kompanke, Ray Boland. I've got an unbelievable grassroots effort throughout the district. I've got a tremendous amount of support. I've got a lot of county chairs that are on my side that are helping with my campaign. So I'm focusing on Ron Kine, because that's what we need to do to get the 3rd District moving forward again.
Very good. Tony Kurtz of Prairie du Chien is a Republican candidate in the 3rd Congressional District. The primary is August 12th. Mr. Kurtz, thanks for visiting Wisconsin
Enjoyed it,
Eye.
Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.